FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
There's at least a conceit on the part of those who are not trained in understanding the tradition that is fairly simple. You can simply read the Quran and read the Hadith and implement Islamic law. So there is that problem, the lack of a literacy to understand the Islamic tradition, that in part contributes to the confusion about Sharia. Mm-hmm. Second is that those who perform in the name of Sharia, by that I mean the ulama tradition at large, oftentimes go for legal formalism and forget that the message and the essence behind those forms is an ethical project, and an ethical, for lack of a better word, I use the word project, but an ethical set of practices that must be completely internalized according to which one lives. Now, the difficulty that you have is that there's a great deal of enthusiasm in order to restore Islamic law, but the lack of literacy amongst those who are advocating it precludes dissent, because of when you read the text and you just understand the text on face value, you would say that there's no further discussion. And that's what we have in the late 20th century, early 21st century, that people running around what I call, dial-a-verse Islam. That is, you just pick up one verse, dial a verse,
Oh, dial a verse.
1-800, dial Quran, etc.
Right, yes, right.
So kind of, you have the same kind of thing of, dial a verse Islam, and then you take the verse, and then you perform, and you run with it, and, God help you if you're in the way, mm-hmm. Okay? And so I think the impoverished rate of literacy, and I think there's a greater crisis. As much as there's a rhetoric for Islamic reformation, the resources in Muslim societies are unavailable to translate that into reality. Everybody in Muslim societies want to become an engineer and an engineer and an engineer. I mean, those are the three professions they want to become. In other words, who is there to study history? Who is there to study culture? Who is there to study art? You go to Cairo University, go to Damascus University, see which part of the university is the most, has the best resources and which is the most impoverished. The business school will be right up there, there's engineering departments, but the humanities will be completely impoverished. And I've seen at Damascus University philosophy professors sitting 7 and 8 to a room with a small desk in front of them. So, I mean, we are extremely privileged in these parts of the world where we have extraordinary institutions of learning. And I do think that some of the impulse to take this debate about Islamic reform and about understanding the Sharia further does happen amongst Muslim minority communities in Europe and North America, where people are interested in discovering their legacy and their history in order to make that possible. I'm not saying it doesn't happen elsewhere, but it's very difficult to find that in some kind of organized manner. So the question of that Barbara raised, the question of dissent, that dissent requires a certain knowledge of the tradition. And the absence of that knowledge means that what we have in the name of, what replaces tradition is demagoguery and rhetoric. So the Islamists, for instance, who are calling from the rooftops for the implementation of Islamic law, have very little intellectual depth to make that possible. So with the result that as soon as they take power, the first thing they do is to implement the exemplary punishments of cutting off the hands of a few poor people, or beheading and stoning some person who might have conducted sexual violations, and completely discredit what should have been a really meaningful moral project of some sort.